Recently on ABC television, they've been running a program called The New Inventors. It's called The New Inventors in case anybody who hasn't died from old age remembers the old inventors, which was a long time ago. What they have on this show is they have people bring along inventions which are supposed to be, according to the show, brand new things that people have just come up with that they couldn't find anybody that would help them get the things out to market. A few weeks ago, they had a device on which apparently has been on the market for 3 years and is selling all over the place, and which uses sound waves to sterilise water. Now, Ian and Richard Saunders happened to be in the audience that night. I'm not quite sure how they were able to control themselves and how they didn't get arrested. This particular machine uses a 9-volt battery. That's the ones that run your smoke alarm for about 6 months, and it will purify the water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool by sending sound waves into the pipe. Ian's going to tell you all about his investigation of it and how he went out there to demonstrate and try to show whether or not it worked. Ian Bryce.
Thanks very much, Peter. I'll try and live up to their expectations. Okay, so the presentation that I'm giving tonight is titled Singing to Your Pool, and you've probably figured out why it's called that already. And this talk is not about zappers that you would get from cracks to cure your aches and pains. It's not about crystals from New Age magazines and bookshops, but about devices with real scientific backup, or that claim some real scientific backup. And it's about devices which are supported by respected bodies such as universities, research councils, the ABC's New Inventors program, education departments of states. And it's about devices on which your taxpayers' money is being spent. And it's basic science education falling apart, and we're going to look at the cure for this problem, we hope. It will get to efficiency electric motor, then the Q-Link high-tech pendant, fourthly the green fire spark plug, and finally the anti-bio-cooled steriliser. Starting with the Fitch Fuel Saver. This is the device which you can buy on the internet, and it's fitted to the petrol part of the car via 2 screw threads, and at least I'll say the fuel does come into contact with the device, unlike various other polarisers which the Skeptics have investigated, which is simply clamped on the outside of the pipe. Another version of the device is a handful of black balls which you drop into the fuel tank. I'm not kidding you. It lasts 400,000 kilometres, hence it's not being consumed in any way, and the manufacturers recognise this and describe it as a catalyst. How much does it cost? This is a question and answer from the website. This depends on the size of the engine, and small engines like push and ride on lawnmowers can be equipped from $40 all the way up to motorcycles, $50, cars $300 to $660, with large trucks costing between $780 and $1,800. Now, based on the fact that what the device does is no different in any case, I suggest that this is based on the ability to pay, and it will help extend the useful life of the catalytic converter. What else could you want for it? Is there anything else you would put on a wish list that you would do to your car? Scientific backup. Their website quotes test reports from around the world, in particular Indonesia, the USA and Australia. You can see here, this is a copy from the website of the test in an Indonesian laboratory. And knowing a bit about laboratory tests, it does indeed look genuine. You don't need to be able to read Indonesian to see that it does look reasonably okay in accordance with expectations. However, it's a bit hard to go for me to go to Indonesia and investigate this. So instead, I chose the more local one to investigate, which is by a company called Vipac Engineers and Scientists, based in Melbourne. Anyone heard of Vipac? No, okay. They test cars and aircraft and buildings and anything that vibrates and shakes or produces power. An accredited testing laboratory. So this is the header of the report from Vipac, which is on their website, and it all looks in order. fixed fuel catalyst and so forth is all listed there, document control, everything you'd expect in a proper calibration or test report. When it gets down to the actual tests, we can see some results here. I'll just read out some of the figures to you. This is the composite urban emission drive cycle, which is the CUE DC class NA vehicle, GMV something like less than 4 tonnes. In standard showroom condition, it gets 12.52 litres per 100 kilometres. I might say this is a test on a dynamometer, not on the road. So the car is sitting in the laboratory with its wheels on rollers, and there's a driver in the car, and he's attempting to follow a particular speed curve which is presented to him on the computer. And if he can't keep the speed between the curves, so what is going on? Now, before giving the answer, we'll now look at the second machine, which is the Gemini electric motor. And some of you are probably familiar with the Lutech free energy generator, which is not actually backed by any scientific authorities, and that's not for part of my presentation today. So the double efficiency electric motor appeared on the New Inventors on ABC television a few months ago, and its inventor John Ettridge described the Gemini electric motor as an improved electric motor. Its core improvement is that it is able to use both sides of the energized coils and potentially produce twice the power for the same amount of energy. Well, that to me means that given that most engines are about 90, electric engines, it's easy to get one's 95% efficient, so this would make his to be 190% efficient. This puts it in the class of free energy and over unity and perpetual motion and so forth. And I will say that although this got through the selection panel behind the scenes on the New Inventors, it was, however, evidently canned by the panel of judges who did realise that that was an impossible claim and that they would not give it any credit without further backup. The third device is the Q-Link high-tech pendant from Claris Products. And that's a device which you hang around your neck on a chain, somewhat like the badge we've got here, and about as effective. But I shouldn't say that without having judged the facts, should I? It costs about $198 for the Sports Classic, which is that one that appears to have the workings, the electronic workings of the printed circuit visible. So it saves them on a metal cover, I guess. $498 for the sterling silver model, or $1,248 for the 14-karat gold model. And you can see there's a lot of sports stars there. It's squared black and blue. That helps. So we see there's medical professionals recommend it. Scientific studies have shown. And this is all quite convincing to the average buyer. So what does it claim? All sorts of health benefits, such as relieves stress, sleepless nights, prevents headaches, and protect you from electromagnetic fields. Now that's interesting. Get onto that later. The website is called Anecdotes Galore. Champion golfer Ernie Els, and 14 players have won a tournament after trying the Q-Link. Well, what does that mean? Perhaps whether it worked or not, some of them would go on to win tournaments, one would suspect. Anthony Robbins, the firewalker, uses it. It's a big recommendation. And Deepak Chopra, who writes books on the afterlife, and Ayurvedic science, which is even more suspect as far as the skeptics are concerned. And Bart Cummings, well, it didn't do him much good anymore.
Did his horse have to?
We always like to be corrected. Is there what scientific basis is claimed on the website and the literature? It uses subtle energy physics. Biofield. It will align your cells and energy systems into balance. Sealed within each Q-Link is a special resonating cell programmed to the human body's optimum energy frequencies. A tuning board to protect the resonating cell from outside interruptions. At the absolute cutting edge of quantum physics. It which will clarify the energies of superstring. No, this is serious. And if you think that it's all bull dust, the website goes on to refer to research by a whole lot of various people around the world, with doctors before their names and professors before their names and universities after their names and so forth. And I looked through this list, and it's saying that these researchers have indicated wearing cooling reduces the effects of active mobile phones on human brain cells. Well, I didn't know that they had any effect. We shall see. So I looked at this list of researchers, and the only one nearby was Dr. Rodney Croft, with a capital C, at the University of Wollongong. So I contacted him, and he worked then in the Brain and Behaviour Research Institute. He's now moved to Melbourne at Monash University Swinburne campus, I think it is. His research was supported, financed by the cooling manufacturer, Paris Products, the university, hence the taxpayer, the research grant, hence the taxpayer. So it's your taxes at work to harness the energy from superstrings. And papers, I sought out the papers published on these topics, and they're in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, which is not one of the, I'm told by our medical advisors that that's not one of the most highly regarded journals. It is a refereed scientific journal nevertheless. And this is an abstract of the paper, and it lists a whole lot of researchers from around the world. And I've got the entire paper available as well if anyone wants to see it. So I asked Rodney Croft about the scientific basis, and he said yes, he did in fact a real test, and he sent me the paper. Which we have here, one of them. And the subjects were seated in a booth with a cell phone operating attached to their head, and they were wearing a Q-link with its power turned off or on, randomised by the experimenter. So the wires to the power supply for the Q-link went out of the booth and had a switch under control of the experimenter. So it was a randomised, controlled, single-blind test. This is all very scientific. He recorded their EEG, which means basically their brain waves, I understand, the psychological state, from asking them some simple questions, reaction time and accuracy of perception. And he found positive results. Q-link does affect neural functions, auditory response, and weakens the effect of mobile phones on the brain. And he says these effects are statistically significant, i.e. above the chance level. So what does it do? The Q-link, how does it work? It emits a low dose. The manufacturers know that the scientific paper says it emits low dose 100 milliwatt uptake. I take that means DC input. Continuous waves at 7377 megahertz. This is the magic resonance with the superstring knots and the cells of the human body, I guess. However, a bit of research by the Skeptics shows that that frequency is reserved for communications. They have no such license, so they are either transmitting illegally or they're lying. And Claris told him that this EMF acts as a carrier wave for subatomic information. I say that's utter bull dust. And yet the paper, a refereed scientific paper, reports such statements from the manufacturer without question. The paper concludes that such claims are not verifiable because science does not have the requisite tools at present. Well, I suggest he can speak for himself. Now, how is it measured? This is a pattern of a typical electrode arrangement on the brain, and weakens the effect of mobile phones and claims the effects are statistically significant above chance, as we said. Previous papers by Croft, based on the same experiment, show that cell phones do affect the EEG and brain function. Once I heard that he was claiming effects from mobile phones, I lost a bit of interest in the Q-link. I was much more interested in what he found out about mobile phones. And he did establish that the mobile phones affect all these brain functions we mentioned. I haven't yet been able to get that paper to investigate it further. And he quotes the references in the paper include refereed articles such as myocardial protection conferred by electromagnetic fields. It all sounds very suspect. Now we'll move on to the green fire spark plug.
I thought the claim was right to protect against the electromagnetic field.
yet it generates its own electromagnetic field. This is one of the mysteries. This caused considerable difficulty for Rodney Croft in writing up his paper, but he managed to get around it. The green fire spark plug is a new spark plug system which reduces toxic emissions by between 20 and 40%, as stated on the new inventors. There's the inventor. And you can see that the spark plug has got 5 holes coming out the top, and when it ignites the petrol vapours inside, theoretically there's a flame gashes out these 4 holes and ignites the rest of the petrol much more effectively. So it was submitted to the new inventors, it was accepted by their screening panel off air, and it was accepted fully by the judging panel on air. And it's claimed to be tested under CFR Regulation 40, parts such and such, with certified independent laboratories in the USA, UK and Australia. Well, I have not yet chased up all of those, because obviously there's a limited number of hours in the day, but it would be interesting to see what they have to say. Now we'll look at the final claim, the final invention, which is the anti-bio-pool sterilizer, invented by David Telfer, priced $1,600 to $3,000. Consists of 2 units, or 3 units. Firstly, there's a power pack. Which which plugs into the power. Then there's the module. I think not quite the right time to turn the lights off.
I was told to do it.
Yeah. This is the device. You can come and look at it later. It comes in a.
Turn it on again. Yeah, that's good.
It comes in a beautiful shiny plastic box, and it's got these seals around it that say warranty void if opened. And it contains a printed circuit board with an LED display, and it's got wires coming out which go to a number of magic wands. What do you think might be in that?
Fueling.
Let's see what's in Thank you, yes. I'm obliged to Graham Lang of the Gold Coast Skeptics for bringing this to our attention and obtaining a unit and sending it down to us. And you can see there that it straps onto the pipes carrying the water via a very expensive advertising slogan, basically. And the board that you mount it on has all this spare area so they can put their advertising brochure beside the unit so other pool operators can see it. We have one of their advertising brochures here if anyone wants to have a look at it. Claims. This is from their website. Does all sorts of things. Improves health and safety, significant overall savings, reduces chloramines and TDS, fights Pseudomonas and Cryptosporidium bacteria. Reduces biofilm, that's built up on the inside of pipes and things. Improves water quality and so on and so forth. Stabilises pH, reduces backwashing and maintenance. And many other magic things. It described the 2 elements that it includes, and the website says that the control unit houses a circuit board incorporating a programmed microchip which causes the emission of both an electromagnetic field and a sonic pulse by the activator. So they're claiming both a electromagnetic field and sound, hence the term singing to your pool, which is the title of my talk. Activators are mounted on the outside of the pipework, and so forth, but the water passes through an electromagnetic field in low kilohertz SSFs, whatever that is, emitted from the activator. Okay, so that's what they claim. And on the science side, Antibio's commitment to continuing R&D programs will ensure that it remains at the forefront of water treatment technology. Antibio engaged the services of Griffith University to undertake research into the effects of the Antibio system. The laboratory is headed by Dr. Helen Stratton, Bachelor of Applied Science with Honours and PhD. Results have been so impressive that the Australian Federal Government awarded Antibio the Oz Industry R&D Start Grant. Whose money is that? Yours. And the Australian Research Council awarded the SPURT grant for research into biofilm build-up in pipes. This assistance will be utilised to intensify research and provide water treatment solutions around the world. That's a straight quote from their website. Okay. Well, they're the claims for the 5 inventions, or devices. And Now we're going to look more closely at the disease which I believe has struck modern science, to see how this situation might have come about, where science is backing up these devices. Going back to the Fitch fuel saver, recalling that the VIPAC report showed fuel consumption is down and all 5 emissions are reduced, and that VIPAC is an accredited testing agency and so forth. So the VIPAC test report, these are now quotes from the VIPAC test report. It was carried out according to that particular cycle, and so on and so forth. This extract says, the 2 tests were driven by Mr. Bill Sheether, Fitch Fuel Catalyst Australia Proprietary Limited, and were run using regular pump grade diesel fuel and so forth. So the skeptics say that the emissions test is designed to minimise dependence on the particular skills of a competent and impartial driver. But it is extremely bad practice that the client be allowed to run the test. It's supposed to be independent. I asked VIPAC about this, but the engineer, Robin Davies, has left the company. They asked Mr. Bill Sheether about this, and he found that he has the South Coast franchise for Fitch and is making a lot of money from this. And he replied, I insisted on driving the car. I was not about to let some young whippersnapper drive my 8-year-old Land Cruiser. So there you are. That is the scientific basis for letting the bull loose in the china shop, or whatever you might like to say. Letting the fox guard the chickens. Now we'll go to the double efficiency electric motor. Skeptics say that the theory of magnetic circuits is well known. This change in the design would increase the torque from a motor, but the RPM would be reduced in proportion due to back EMF. The output power would remain the same. It's a bit like putting 8 wheels on your car and expecting it to go twice as fast. And much of this was pointed out on the New Inventors viewer feedback group, I might say, which is certainly a positive aspect to it all. And the skeptics say that existing motors are up to 95% efficient by 100 watts of electricity in and 95 watts out of the shaft. Thus, his is about 190% efficient, which is called over unity, perpetual motion, or free energy. And does he claim any scientific backup? Sort of. He commissioned Paul Chandler of the Northern Territory University, who described the Gemini motor in certain terms, saying it might have some advantages, and remaining at the high efficiencies that permanent magnetic motors are capable of. So the university statement contains exaggerations about doubling the power for the same volume, and has been further misrepresented by the inventor, saying it doubles the efficiency. And in fact, the scientist is saying it remains at the same efficiency. So we have 2 stages of exaggeration leading to the false scientific reports. And the inventor submitted this to the New Inventors, the ABC New Inventors panel. The screening panel accepted it, the judging panel this time rejected it. Fortunately, the truth came out in the viewers' forum. However, the result was eroded confidence in the scientific process, time wasted on the program and by viewers, and a real invention was excluded. For every false invention that gets on the program, there's a real one that doesn't get a showing. Back to number 3, the Q-Link high-tech pendant. Remember, we had a positive result wearing mobile phones. Now, going into the results in more detail, you will find that the scientific paper contains pages upon pages upon pages, a great jumble of figures and graphs and charts, and they all look to me very close to resembling random noise. And he measured resting brain waves, 3 locations across the skull, back to front, mid and rear, 3 lateral locations, left, mid and right, 5 frequency bands, and 2 times after the stimulus. Total combinations multiplying all those together is 90. Then he measured phase-locked EEG. These were analysed by 3 sagittal positions on the skull, 3 lateral locations on the skull, 5 frequency bands, and 4 times. Total combinations 180. Psychological testing, 1 more variable. Reaction time, 1 more variable. And accuracy of perception, 1 more variable. Total, on my count, was 273 results analysed. And as I understand it, results with with less than 10% probability by chance alone were interpreted as significant in this paper. So out of 273 comparisons, you would thus expect about 27 positives by chance alone. So I believe that explains his positives making false positives. And my diagnosis is that it's a severe case of over-analysis. And if you measure enough things enough times, you'll eventually see patterns, even in random noise. Who's seen an elephant in the clouds? I think most of us have. The green fire spark plug, which reduces toxic emissions. Again, it was submitted to the new inventors, accepted by the screening panel and accepted by the judging panel and tested under those regulations. We didn't investigate that. But the skeptics say, well, they also claim it increases power with a slight timing advance. Well, the skeptics say, of course it does. Advancing the spark of the engine always gives a slight power increase, but at the cost of piston damage, as it's more prone to pinging. And it's a common technique among sellers of these devices that you change something real when you install the device to make sure there's some change in the measurement. You don't isolate your device. So that's the flaw in the method that they try to use. They also claim it's new patented technology, and their patent is on the website. It's from 1995. There's a diagram showing that the skeptics say this idea, which is a small pre-combustion chamber within the spark plug, has been around since the 1950s and has been thoroughly explored by all the engine companies and found to be of no benefit.
Yeah, and the bit that protrudes into the cylinder looks bigger than a normal spark plug, so does it increase the compression ratio as well?
That's quite a thought, Martin. That could have a real effect. Yes, if you put enough metal in there. Yeah, again, that will increase pinging, which will shorten your engine life.
That increases the risk of dissipating the spark plug.
Yes, there would. Okay, would be a risk with that. So that's where that one falls down. Now the skeptics obtained a sample of the anti-biopool sterilizer, getting onto the last one, and reverse engineered it. We found the electronics contains a PIC, which is a type of processor, and transistors. And the electronics do three things. Firstly, they advertise the company name on an LCD screen. Secondly, they make two LEDs flash mysteriously, just as computers back in the 60s had a couple of lights on the front which blinked on and off. And thirdly, and apparently incidentally, it does send an audio signal, 10 volt, to the wand. And the audio signal is a square wave for the technically minded, varying between 1.8 and 2.3 kilohertz, about 4 times per second. So it sounds a bit like a car alarm. And maybe tomorrow we can get it running when we've got a bit more time available and we can all have a listen to it. And the wand, we dismantled the wand. It consists of 500 turns of copper wire and a ferrite rod. I detected 3 emissions from the wand. Sound emissions, the audio tone can be heard directly. It's very faint. It appears to be accidental due to the coil contracting and expanding. The audio frequency magnetic field, the rod acts as an antenna and radiates a weak audio frequency magnetic field. This can be picked up with a telephone or tape player. And an RF signal, it also radiates the RF signal on about 980 kilohertz, probably unintended. The circuitry is not designed to do it, it's just a spurious emission, you would say. And that can be heard on a radio up to 1.4 metres from the device. The fact that it radiates an RF signal probably violates the claim to be an EMC compliant device and perhaps makes it illegal. We hope. And the anti-bio say that it enhances the existing filtration equipment on your pool, so you should not remove that equipment. The skeptics say if you did remove it, it would make it a lot easier to test the anti-bio device. They say it causes the emission of both an electromagnetic pulse and a sonic pulse by the activator. The water passes through an electromagnetic field in low kilohertz SSFs emitted from the activator. Now the skeptics and scientists know that sound waves and electromagnetic fields at normal levels can't do anything to water bacteria or anything else of that nature. The theory is well known and we've had 100 years of testing in that area, so it cannot work. Just in case there was some remaining doubt, the antenna is usually installed on plastic pipes, but anti-bio are happy to install it on any pipe, including steel pipes, in which audio frequency magnetic fields will not penetrate, so they know it makes no difference. And the prospective customer, Versace Hotels on the Gold Coast, obtained a unit on approval and tested it themselves, and they had the water analysed with and without the device, and found no change. There was no change in the plate count with the system. And also Antibio list many of their satisfied customers to include the Queensland Education Department. We'd be keen to investigate the degree of approval or sponsorship which is occurring there. And they engaged, they couldn't do it without a university. Oh, we already mentioned Helen Stratton, and at the Griffith University, so they enlisted her to do tests. I obtained the summary report of her R&D work and spoke to her, and she would not send me the full report, even though it exists and was largely paid for by taxpayers. She tested, however, according to the summary, she tested many things, most gave negative results, but biofilms gave, she claimed, statistically significant results. Is this another case of over-analysis, where if you measure enough things, you're bound to get some positive results by chance alone? When I told her what Antibio claimed on their website, she said that grossly misrepresents her findings. So again, we've got scientific research that goes beyond the levels of accuracy, and we've got claims by the manufacturer that go, again, beyond what the university claims. Asked if the theory behind the device was sufficient to justify such intensive research, she said she was not an expert in electromagnetics. However, Dr. Stephen O'Keefe at Griffith Uni, Nathan campus, has a grant to study the best arrangement of the wands on the water pipe. This is your taxpayers' money at work. I'd like to ask, what could motivate university researchers to devote their skills to such obvious nonsense? Could it be the various research grant schemes which allow taxpayers' money to flow to universities and researchers? Exploring research grants, the winners are the researcher, papers published, academic success, the lab is funded, a big incentive to get positive results. The universities receive funding from industry that allows them to grow, a big incentive to turn a blind eye. The device manufacturer gains genuine scientific evidence and support for his product. That's genuine in quotes. And gains profits, which greatly justify him paying his contribution to the research grant. The losers, the public, they cannot tell real from bogus products when they all have these scientific credentials. And he pays money for devices, many of which do not work. And he may neglect real health problems, which then become serious, as we all know. That's one danger of these bogus devices. And of course the taxpayer loses because his money is squandered by the various research grant authorities. So wrapping up now, the cure. My suggestions to try and alleviate this situation is do not overanalyse. This is firstly the recommendations for the researchers. Do not overanalyse. If you measure 273 signals and combinations, even at 5% significance, you can expect 14 hits. Specify the comparisons to be made before collecting the data, so it's not just a fishing exercise where you keep fiddling with it until you find the result you want. And thirdly, you must apply the statistical tests to the ensemble, not the individual results, i.e. apply a significance threshold appropriate to the number of comparisons to be made. For example, for 273 signals, the threshold might, instead of being 0.1, it might be 0.0002, in which case you would have rejected all of the findings. And the cure. Well, firstly, the recommendations, the cure, these recommendations for the authorities, such as the authorities being the research councils, university departments, journals who publish these papers, the referees who approve such papers, and respected media, such as the ABC, we hope. And the recommendations are to carry out an investigation based on the three-legged stool. Firstly, is there a sound theoretical basis which makes this claim possible? Secondly, does the evidence to date really stand up? And thirdly, what is the credibility of the claimant? Is he clarifying superstring energies? And I say, if any leg is missing or short, the stool will fall over and the project should not be funded. Or to summarise, who are you going to call? Bull shifters.